It started 21 years ago when I was 7 and my sister was 10. We were playing in the woods in our backyard. It wasn't unusual for us to venture far. Our parents really had no idea. They figured we were safe, and they were right for a while. Until one night, my sister and I were a little too far and couldn't find our way home. I remember it clearly. Which way did we go? Elena squeezed my hand then, a gesture I could only feel due to the inky blackness, the moon shielded by lush treetops. There was a moment of hesitation before she answered, "This way," and yanked me along. What seemed like hours passed. Are we almost there? Elena was in the lead, telling me to duck and where to step. She grunted and growled before each instruction, making me assume that she either got hit in the face with a branch or tripped on a rock, as she didn't want me to suffer the same. "I'm sure we're nearly there, Alice," she replied. She sounded annoyed, whether at me, the situation, or both. I didn't know, but I didn't say anything else after that, not until I saw the moonlight bathe the clearing up ahead. "Elena, I see it!" We picked up our pace and broke through the clearing, touched by a pale gray. What took up the space were 5 tall, slender boulders encircling a stone pillar. We had journeyed through these woods so often, and we had never came across this. Elena approached it. I didn't. I could still feel the moment when her hand slipped from mine, the moment I should have pulled her back, told her no, but I was scared. I didn't even know what we were looking at, but something wasn't right. When Elena met the epicenter, she glided her fingers across its surface, her eyes widening. At last, I found my voice, though my knees were still wobbled. "Elena, I don't think we should be here." "They're just rocks," she said. I looked along the tree line, unable to see beyond it. I couldn't shake an awful feeling like we were trespassing and being watched. I had already been afraid of the dark, a fear everyone, including Elena, admitted was irrational. "There's nothing there," they would say even without sparing a glance. "There's no such thing as monsters." For a brief time, I too had started to believe that my phobia was irrational, despite not being able to rid myself of it. But after this night, I think I'm well within my right to be terrified of the dark, even if no one can know why. Elena went from boulder to boulder, placing her hand on each. "Wonder how they got into a circle," she said, expecting me to offer an explanation. Wondering how those rocks were able to be moved was the last thing on my to-do list. Instead, I pleaded, I think we should go." As Elena went to respond, the brush opposite us rustled. Branches cracked and broke. Leaves shook violently. Then, something emerged. 2 sets of antlers jutted out from the darkness, a larger set overshadowing a smaller set between them. Next came a head shaped like a deer, only strangely off-white and as smooth-looking as the antlers it bore. The rest of the bipedal creature was covered in brown fur, not unlike deer, and all 4 of its limbs were hooved. However, what gripped me like a nightmare come to life was the way it stared at me with eyes that weren't there. From a short distance, whatever the horrific thing was seemed small, hunched over, arms shriveled against its massive, heavy chest. But as it began to move, every one of its joints cracking, its body contorting, its neck snapping from side to side, nearly turning 180 degrees. It straightened its spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, growing taller. I froze in place, head unconsciously tilting back, following the breast height. Something warm streamed down my leg. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I heard the words echo in my mind. "Elena, run!" But nothing came out. The beast crookedly stepped forward, like it was a chore, making its slow way towards my sister. Elena hadn't moved either. She stared at what stood before her, towering over her, casting a looming, disconcerting shadow. It reached out, bony fingers spreading, revealing tips of impossibly sharp black nails inches from Elena's cheeks. The words that had been ricocheting off the walls of my skull finally found their way to my vocal cords. first coming out as a shriek that halted the creature's approach and had both its and my sister's head jolt in my direction. "Run, Elena, run!" The creature let out its own feral screech and barreled its claws down towards my sister. Elena's body whipped and flew sideways, landing face first into the grass. I screamed her name but cowered as the monster that attacked her began its ungraceful march towards me. I folded immediately, knees buckling under the weight of my own fear, tears and snot that I couldn't control streaming down my face as I whimpered like a wounded puppy. It fell to all fours and craned its neck. It was so close to me, I could feel and smell its warm, rancid breath. I stared into the empty eye sockets of what appeared to be a skull of a buck, as if whatever it was wore the animal's remains as a mask. It stilled for minutes, picking me apart, and I waited, paralyzed and helpless, for it to slay me the way it did Elena. But rather than the terrible call it emitted moments before its strike, a soft, prolonged coo accompanied a slight upturn of its chin. I stayed as quiet as I could, thinking any noise would set it off, and I'd end up dead on the ground. It leaned in, every one of my muscles tensed as it sniffed. Its tongue, long and thin, slithered toward me, caressing my skin from my jawline to my temple, leaving what felt like a disgusting slime in its wake. When the appendage recoiled, the beast let out a hum and rose to 2 legs. The crepitus sawing my nerves, it raised its arm as high as my torso, fingers clenching and unclenching as its hand advanced. A near deafening pop, and the creature collapsing happened simultaneously. Something wet splattered onto me. My eyes fell through the creature's unmoving body, limbs sprawled out, a hole in its back oozing black, viscous liquid. "Are you alright?" An overtoned voice filled the clearing as a woman stepped into the moonlight. She was tall, and her long, braided hair rested against her shoulder. Its fiery color a stark contrast to her black apparel. A large rifle sat in her grasp, her posture relaxed as she made her way over. "What are you doing out here, kid?" She looked down at me with her cocked eyebrow and a grimace. I frowned in turn, shock obviously still choking me, before a groan grabbed my racing thoughts, anchoring me as to pull me back into earth itself. Elena stirred, but barely. I rushed to her side, dropping on a knee, hands hovering, contemplating what to do, what to say. She shivered and rolled onto her back. Her face was covered in blood. Slash marks stretched from her collarbone to her waistline, tearing through her shirt, digging into her flesh. She coughed. Red droplets sputtered from her mouth. Her pupils found me, and her lips moved, but there were no words. Elena? I didn't want to believe it then, but I was watching my sister die, and I was powerless to help. Footsteps came and stopped behind me. "She isn't gonna make it," the woman said rather coldly, like it was routine. I ignored her. Well, tried to anyway. She wasn't wrong. Elena spat up blood, and her every breath was slow and shallow. She was gonna die, and there was nothing I could do. "Who are you?" I asked, annoyed that some stranger was witnessing my sister's final moments beside me instead of our parents. If I had the strength, I would have carried her home, wherever home was. There was a pause before the woman spoke. "You can save her." I shot her a look, vision blurred by tears. What do you mean?" "Do you want to save her?" The question hung in the cool night air, only for the reason of my naive brain trying to catch up. Once it had, I nodded. The woman glanced at the moon and swung her rifle around to her back before leveling her eyes on me. She reached out. "Give me your hand." I stared at the gesture at first, but a terrible coughing fit from my sister had my arm springing forward. The woman took my hand gently, turned it so my palm was faced up, and placed something into it. When I retracted my arm, she crouched and whispered something close to Elena's ear. Elena shut her eyes, and the rise and fall of her chest stopped. Panic set in. "What did you do?" Quiet, the woman said. Put what I gave you around your neck. I opened my embrace to a small wire pendant in the shape of spirals hanging from the black thread. What is it? It's a Celtic spirit knot. It's said to symbolize many things like life, death, and rebirth. How will it save my sister? The woman took a deep breath. Shut your eyes and picture her smiling. I did as instructed, dubious to say the least, but I was desperate. Hold on to that image. I thought about the day that Elena and I went to the zoo and she got to touch the giraffes. They were her favorite animals. She was so excited she couldn't stop grinning for weeks after. You won't feel it happening. What? I closed my eyes, but I wasn't sure where I was supposed to be. I was alone, surrounded by a thick fog. The grass beneath me was yellow and wilted. Even the sky was completely black, no stars, no moon. I put my hands out where Alina was just a second ago. Hello? The only answer I got was my own echo. I stood and started to walk. No matter how far I went, it didn't seem like I got anywhere. It was the same fog, dead grass, and blackening sky. There was no one else around. I wasn't scared though. I didn't feel much of anything, honestly. My tears had dried, my scrambled thoughts had calmed, my worry had subsided. I was at sudden strange peace. Nothing could touch me, nothing could hurt me. But the longer I stayed, the less I remembered before I had even arrived. Memories became mangled messes of static. Names were stuck on the tip of my tongue, but never came to be. My favorite foods, my favorite color, my favorite television shows. They were all draining away. My mom and dad's faces. Did I even have a mom or dad? And who's, Elena? That wasn't it. Alicia? No. What was it? Why couldn't I remember? And who even was she? I was teetering on the edge. I hadn't realized I thought. Everything I knew was fading. When I was brought back, plucked from the place I now call Nowhere Land, it was like having someone startle you out of a deep slumber, and all you were able to do was gasp for breath like you'd never tasted air in your life. I noticed the breeze first, then the navy blue sky freckled with white dots, and a bright waxing gibbous poured onto me. She'll live. In a stormy voice interrupted a vague moment of serenity, and with it came a whirlwind of emotions I had nearly forgotten existed. Fearing dragging its nails down my throat, sadness poking behind my eyes, solicitude plummeting my stomach to the soles of my feet. That wind caressed damp cheeks that sent a shiver through me. With stiff movements, in seconds of what seemed like utter silence, I faced the woman with red hair and black clothes, eyes burning. She was standing now, and then I turned towards the girl laying in front of me, Elena. Blood still coated her body, but the marks of her cruel fate had disappeared, leaving only a tattered shirt showing where they once were. I don't understand, I whispered. Where was I? What happened to Elena? The woman's next words stunned me, piercing my core. You were dead. What? I didn't even hear myself speak. I felt detached. I was there, but wasn't. The necklace kid. She flicked her head at my open palm, with a black threaded necklace with a spiral pendant draped. Celtic spirit knot, life, death, and rebirth. It has a magic essence to it, the woman continued. As long as it's in your possession, your sister will live. There's just one condition. My fingers folded over the pendant, bit down into my flesh as I clenched my fist, bracing for what she had to say. You share life's essence now. This girl will live as long as you sacrifice your life's essence to her. I was at a loss. I let myself trail off and simply gazed upon my sister, who was now breathing steadily, like she was asleep. Every night, you'll give a little of your life essence to her in order to keep her alive. Doing the ritual, however, you'll be dead for 60 seconds. 60 seconds? It still didn't make much sense, but that place, Nowhere Land, was I really only there for a minute? It felt so much longer, almost a lifetime. You'll be sleeping during the process, and it's painless, the woman insisted. When your sister wakes up tomorrow, she won't remember anything. But I will? I placed my hand on Elena's arm. You can choose to tell her. Would you really want her to carry the burden of that knowledge? Burden? The woman sighed. The more life essence you give her, the less you have. Oh. I ran my fingers around the fabric of Elena's ripped shirt, as much clarity as a 7-year-old could have bulldozing me. You have the choice not to. The woman turned and made her way back to her prey. She cranked her head upwards and, from a sheath slung across her back, drew a machete. It only took one strike to sever the beast's head, after which the woman wiped her blade on the beast's fur coat before resheathing her weapon. Not long after the decapitation did the beast's body begin to disintegrate, particles caving in piece by piece at first until they all came crumbling down. Within the gentle wind, the ashy remains drifted away. The woman continued towards the woods, disappearing within the brush. "Wait!" I yelled, but she was already gone, and it was just me, alone with slumbering Elena. Our dad found us nearly an hour later. I hadn't moved, and neither had Elena. We were carried home, I in my mom's arms, and my sister in my dad's. They kept asking what happened, especially seeing Elena's torn clothes and bloodied, catatonic-like state, and me frazzled, dotted with blood that wasn't mine. I said nothing. I couldn't really say anything. My mom was the one who decided to just let us sleep, that we would talk about it all in the morning. That was 20 years ago. Like the woman said, Elena remembered nothing the next day. I was urged many times to explain the events that occurred, but the woman's words replayed in my mind, ultimately dissuading me. Would you really want her to carry the burden of that knowledge? No, I didn't. I never would. The woman was right about something else too. It was a painless process. Every morning at 3 a.m., I would visit Nowhere Land, and the only reason I know the exact time is because I've stayed awake so many nights pondering this fate. I even wished it wasn't true, that it was all just a nightmare my immature brain conjured from being lost in the woods so late at night. But it wasn't some nightmare, not the kind you have to sleep to see anyway. Without fail, when the clock strikes 3 a.m., I opened my eyes to a dark setting that had become way too familiar, a second home. I wandered through the fog, memory hazy, faces of family, friends, and neighbors deteriorating until the endless abyss gives way to nothing. I don't dream after leaving Nowhere Land, and when I wake up, I feel the same as when I got into bed the night before. The only thing I've noticed has been slight memory loss. I'll have forgotten the name of someone I've known for years, or something as simple as where I put the remote, even though I was just holding it. I'm not sure what that means. The woman didn't explain anything past the process of implication that I'm shedding time from my own life. I'm not sure how much life essence I'm giving to my sister, or even how much I had left to give, but Elena wakes up every day smiling, laughing, and happy. I can't imagine taking that away from her or my parents. She's 31 now, and on her way to get married to a nice gentleman who treats her like she's the world. Had I not done what I did, if I didn't do what I still do, she wouldn't be experiencing this. I know I'll die sooner, whenever that may be, but seeing my sister fulfill her life makes me believe it's worth it. I never saw that woman again, nor another creature like the one on that fateful night. Up until now, nobody knew this except the woman and me, and being 28, holding on to this for so many years, it has been a heavy weight on my shoulders.